followed by the Earth people, by what means various bacterial strains become more and more resistant against all types of antibiotics. With this, a multi-resistance will appear over time, which will result, then, only as a natural effect of the cause of antibiotic abuse. As I said, more and more antibiotics will be irresponsibly given to the patients by the doctors, and on the other hand, the people of the earth will eat more and more antibiotic-contaminated meats of all kinds, and to be sure, meats of mammals of all kinds and also of fishes and fowls. This will cause bacterial strains of every kind to become more and more resistant in humans, as I already explained. Consequently, in the end, any medically prescribed antibiotics will no longer be able to cause any healing or any relief from suffering. Yet through this, more and more deaths will appear, just due to the failure of medicines or due to a lack of suitable and effective medicines. From these facts, there will already be talk very soon of an end of the antibiotic age among the Earth people. More and more, every kind of antibiotic has already been criminally and feloniously administered to animals, fish, and fowls in large quantities during the making of meat, or rather the production of meat on the one hand, in order to make these immune to diseases and, on the other hand, to achieve a fast growth and also a rapid weight gain. But in the future, this will cause all sorts of evils for the Earth people, of which the physicians and doctors still have no idea up to now, which will, therefore, also have very unfavorable and extremely dangerous consequences in the future, because the wrong and excessive use of antibiotics in human medicine and veterinary medicine, as well as in the feeding of animals, fish, and fowls, etc., is in no way harmless. The antibiotic residues in the foods of all kinds, about which the Earth person usually knows nothing, trigger a growing spread of resistance from the various strains of bacteria, which can then no longer be fought or else only with difficulty. Consequently, everything in the relevant form leads to hopeless medical treatments and to a fast that will demand more and more deaths. Through this, a catastrophe becomes predetermined and inevitable if reason doesn't triumph and the misuse of antibiotics isn't strictly forbidden and controlled, and if new medicines aren't found in the foreseeable time that can break through the resistance of the dangerous germs that cause extremely dangerous infections, such as wound infections and blood poisoning, but also many other illnesses, such as pneumonia and other ills, whereby the scientists and physicians will often stand before riddles when they have to make diagnoses and have to find out methods of treatment. And once again, it would be said that in the course of time, antibiotic residues produce extremely dangerous effects in the food, and that the health of the consumers is risked and harmed in an extremely severe form through the criminal and felonious injections of antibiotics into the food by profit-greedy elements of all kinds. And actually, injections of antibiotics not only arrive into mammals and fishes as well as into fowls, but also into birds and plants as well as into vegetables and fruits. In fact, it is also true that, more and more, antibiotics also arrive into a variety of creatures of all kinds that are in the ground and in the insect world. But that still isn't enough, because in addition to the antibiotics, the people of the earth produce various poisons of all kinds, as well as detergents, soaps, shampoos, herbicides, insecticides, and fertilizers, along with radioactive radiations and agents of all kinds that cause tremendous damages and that destroy the health of humans and animals as well as of fish, plants, insects and worms, but this is also true in regards to birds. Billy says, if I may address you again on what you once said in reference to tomatoes, these contain active substances which prevent certain types of cancer. Quetzal says that is correct. Tomatoes actually contain certain active substances that can prevent certain types of cancer to a large percentage, and indeed particularly prostate cancer. However, it is important that always enough tomatoes or tomato products are used for food, and especially in a cooked state, because through the cooking process, the active substances are strengthened. But in a positive, preventive form, Other types of cancer are also able to be influenced by the tomato's active substances, as this is also the case with other types of vegetables as well as with fruits and all sorts of herbs and other plants. But about this, in accordance with our directives, I may not give any explanations in an official form, for this would offend against the self-development in terms of the research and insight collection of the Earth people. Billy says always these directives, but I understand that our earthly humanity must strive itself in relation to its own development and, thus, also with respect to all insights and achievements and must acquire its own progress. It's like in school, where no one of a very low class can simply be moved up to a much higher one and be of the acceptance that he could understand the new and higher one if he has not yet learned all the material between the lower and higher class or grade. A progress must always take place in a consistent and systematic manner, such that everything to be learned is actually learned and nothing is omitted from it, as this is also the case, for another example, with the learning of an occupation. If the learning and the progress as well as the development do not occur in this manner, then there arise enormous knowledge gaps as well as a lack of practical knowledge, skill, and experience. But this means that the higher knowledge, etc. can't be understood and can't be processed, which leads to the fact that the higher knowledge or higher achievements are incorrectly applied, which usually leads to dangerous grievances and even to a catastrophe. The following serves as an example. If a primitive person living in the wild comes into a technological civilization and gets a submachine gun pressed into his hand, he will neither be able to use this consciously nor responsibly. Rather, he will simply wildly blast around with it, if he doesn't already throw the gun away from himself in fright, run away screaming, or succumb to insanity, when the shooting iron goes bang. He simply can't understand and can't consciously process the whole thing because he lacks the necessary knowledge and other prerequisites that would enable him to understand it. Thus, it would amount to a paradox if you would break your directives and take hold of the people of the earth under their arms in a progress-related manner. Quetzal says you explained these issues very precisely. You are really very talented in terms of giving explanations in such a way that they are also well understood. Moreover, I have already very often assessed that you muster up an infinite patience in order to explain something over and over again if someone doesn't understand a matter and can't comprehend it. To this, I must confess that for my part, I am not able to muster up this patience, as I am also lacking your diversity of language and explanation possibilities, by what means you can explain facts and issues, etc. in such a way that in the end, no doubt exists anymore. Billy says you are too kind with your compliments, my son. Unfortunately, despite my explanation efforts, misunderstandings arise again and again. Quetzal says but that doesn't happen because of a fault on your part, as I have already very often determined, but because of the fact that complicated and incomplete questions are asked and your answers and explanations aren't analyzed further. Those are the factors that then lead to misunderstandings. In addition, as I have also very often determined, questions are directed towards you, whereby you cannot intelligibly answer the questioners, even with the best intention, because they are still lacking the necessary understanding and cognition possibilities, and therefore, everything is foreign to them. But this very fact is a peculiarity of the earth person, namely that he always wants to know more than what he can actually understand and bear. This, then, also leads to the fact that he asks unclear questions, which he often doesn't even understand or can't formulate properly, from which then even misunderstandings arise and so on. Billy says with that, you may be quite right. Furthermore, it is also such that I simply may not answer questions in full because it isn't the right moment or the necessary understanding to do so isn't given. So for example, today or tomorrow, I can only answer a question partially and can first give a full answer 3 or 7 years later when, in the meantime, the understanding and cognition for this have progressed so far with the questioner that everything becomes clearly received and understood. Quetzal says that is the normal development of learning, recognizing, and understanding. Billy says a fact that, unfortunately, isn't understood by many. Many think that they are always smarter and cleverer than they are